very fortunate we are to have three guests such as these with us. We're delivering this conversation in partnership with our friends at Publicis, world-class communications advertising group, as you'll hear as we go through. I think I'm going to focus our audience, everyone, back on that question on their apps. And I might come to you as well for your answer. But just let me tell you formally who's here. Let me start with Shadi. Shadi El Mourad, business lead at One Energy, part of the Publicis group. This is a huge group, global group, multiple agencies. Where do you spend your time, Shadi?
In an airplane.
In a seat.
Between Dubai, Saudi Arabia and Beirut.
Yeah, thank you so much for being with us. So the same group, but the person whose role is Chief Creative Officer, I mean, the honor is there and the pressure is on. So I hope you don't mind me calling you Fizo.
Please do. I mean, if you called me Ahmed, I would feel that something is wrong.
Yes, you're at home and being told.
I'm Egyptian. Nicknames kind of come as a part of the package.
So you're the Chief Creative Officer for the Publicis Group, but seriously, a global group of agencies, but working with some incredible clients around the world.
Of course.
Yeah, so thank you for being here, Fizo. Now, and Joulan is Joulan Abdul Khalek is the Policy Programs Manager, Africa, Middle East and Turkey at Meta. And we should remind ourselves, Joulan, Meta, a multitude of platforms. Just let's cover some of the best known off. We need little reminder probably, but it helps.
It helps, yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
So tell us some of those brand names.
Okay, of course. So Meta, I'm sure everybody knows WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, Quest 3, like all the VR and metaverse-related issues.
Yeah, and including what was Oculus, I suppose, so virtual reality as well.
Exactly.
We'll hear all about this. Okay, so I suppose now it's time for the big question, particularly for our guests here at Sync. Do you think that artificial intelligence is ultimately going to help or hinder human creativity? Will you please vote now? And our guests will be able to see the answers coming up. Do you think it helps, hinders, or somewhere in between? Let's get the verdicts of the team. Hopefully we'll see some results popping up fairly soon. Oh, here we are. Right, I'm getting a majority somewhere, very diplomatic, somewhere in between, on the fence, okay. But nevertheless, quite a lot more when they don't think both, think it's going to help, okay? So we've got some tailwinds there, all right. Okay, let's hold that thought. Final votes coming in. Oh, actually, look, it's gone to pretty evenly split, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, so the jury is definitely out on this one. Here's a question. Fizo first. AI multiplied by creativity equals?
Possibilities.
It's a world of possibilities.
Just one word.
Yeah.
Shadi, how do you answer?
The next frontier.
The next frontier, right, we want to see what that entails, right? Bit of Star Trek here. Joulan, AI tames creativity.
I think if it's built in a human-centric way, unleashing human potential.
Okay, unleashing, okay. So a great believer in those tailwinds. And how would you have answered that poll question? Does AI help, hinder, or somewhere in between? I'll get each of your take, and then we're going to go digging.
Again, it's a tool. Like, we look at technologies all throughout history. They're tools. So it really matters how we use them to know, basically, how they will impact society or impact the world. Mm-hmm. So I think we can go on about this in the panel, so maybe I'll just stop there.
All right, okay. So tool depends how it's used. Okay, fine. Okay, I will resist the urge to dig deeper. Fizo.
And actually, I'm glad that the results came this way, because I'm a firm believer that it's probably something in between. And the reason is, if you think about, how Hollywood kind of paints that picture of the two extremes of AI, right? You have at one end HAL 9000s, the old from 2001: Space Odyssey. If anyone is a fan of movies here, the all-knowing computer that wants to control human beings and control their lives. But at the other end, you have the naive and benevolent Data from Star Trek, again, live long and prosper, who just happens to be running around doing our bidding. And it's literally two extremes that are not really realistic, either of them. I think Aristotle said, virtue is a mean between two extremes.
Yes.
And that's why I believe that it's probably something like Jarvis from Iron Man, like something in between. Like, it can help, but it also is more than a tool. It's more like a partner in my humble
All right, good. Thank you, Avengers. This is coming together. And by the way, Fizo, stand by, because I want to know real examples of how you're harnessing this, right, in your daily work. So clearly that is coming. Shadi, how would you have answered the poll question? Which button?
I'd have to say it will help, especially in the creative sense. I mean, whenever a tool does come along in the creative world, humans are naturally creative in how they use that. So if we're talking about creativity, then any new tool that comes along is going to be welcomed by the creative industry because it's definitely going to help become more creative.
Right, so let's push that a little bit now, Joulan. On the help front, just help us understand how creatives, creators everywhere are harnessing some of the tools that you have, some of the platforms that you have for their creativity. How is that playing out? And really, I suppose the tighter question is, how are the platforms currently supporting creative expression?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, to answer that question, I think we can think like there's a straightforward answer and there's a less straightforward answer. So in a straightforward way, obviously we have creators using a lot of our products, like for example, Instagram or WhatsApp, to use, for example, generative AI to create text and captions for what they want to create filters, to create like AI generated or AI augmented images and videos. So it is helping people to, to express themselves, to augment the way that they express themselves, and it's giving them sort of a barrage of tools that they can use to express themselves in different ways. So that's the straightforward answer. But the less straightforward answer, I think, is that, at Meta, we have a huge stack of open source AI models, basically, that we've made available to the public, and they're open source. For example, image generation, video generation, music generation, machine vision models that have to do something called segment anything, where basically if you're a doctor and you want to segment organs in a body, this model can be, it's an open source model, can be used to actually do that as well. So I think the less straightforward answer, which is also more inspiring and interesting to me, is how do all of these open source AI models, how will they enable creators and the creative industry to use them?
Yes.
And how can we together, as an ecosystem, think together and work together to build AI that is meaningful and impactful to people?
Right, so there are some fascinating threads that we're going to pull on here around what we now mean by creators, which may or may not be evolving. But when you touch on music generation, image generation, where do we find those at the moment? I say, I don't do that in WhatsApp or Instagram, do I? What do you mean?
GitHub, so these are all in the open domain.
Yep.
So if you're a developer, or if, for example, so there's a whole suite of tech that enables creators in the world, right? So there are a lot of developers, there are a lot of coders, there are a lot of startups basically building with this technology.
Yeah.
So you'd find that you can download the model on the internet, whether that's something called GitHub, which is an open repository for people to download any code, and you can use it, you can alter it, you can train it to do different things. And also these things are also being embedded in our products. So for example, a lot of these open source tech stack are also empowering and enabling our products, like the image generation or the music generation inside of our products.
Yeah, and to a certain extent, that may be happening seamlessly. Some products we see, would you like to activate the AI ingredient now? But it could be both.
I don't get the question.
So with my Zoom, other platforms are available. I can consciously push a button to activate an AI assistant. Whereas in a parallel universe, that is already embedded in the product. It is invisible to my eye.
Yeah, a lot of these tech products have, AI is embedded in tech. It's been embedded in tech for years and years before it became a buzzword, right? Like, for example, the way our feed or any social media feed is built with AI. The way we keep, for example, social media safe is we basically use AI classifiers. So it's a part and parcel of the technology. Yes. I wouldn't view it as something you like click on or click off.
Fine. Fizo, take us into some of the studios that you're sort of overseeing. How right now is AI AI human collaborations refining the creative process? What are you seeing?
Well, it's basically happening in two main areas. So you have creative excellence and you have creative efficiency. Now, let's talk about efficiency first, I think. It's the obvious one, right? So now we're, like Daft Punk says, faster, stronger, better. So in a way, it's speeding up tasks that used to take loads of time for creatives to do what they do best, which is to come up with the ideas to begin with. And B, it's also presenting us with a new level of accuracy that is unprecedented in the industry. Because I've personally, when I was much younger and I was still a young executive in this industry, I used to obsess about going over the files and revising them over and over for maybe there's a spelling mistake or something that I did wrong, but now there are tools, AI tools that can help you make sure that this doesn't happen. And then...
Well, I will let you come on to the next point, but I know one of our Sync Summit guests is thinking now about generative AI, about large language models, about hallucination. The accuracy point has to be challenged a bit at that point.
You still have, I mean, there's all the tools that we use in Publicis have been vetted by the team that is responsible for these tools in Publicis, and they're made available to all the thousands of employees that we have around the world. You still have to have some, that's why I always mention AI as a partner or a creative collaborator rather than a tool, because that means that the accountability goes both ways. Like humans still are in control, right? So you as a creative executive, you still have to make sure that you revise. You're not really, I mean, delusions are real. Sometimes they happen, but you need to make sure that they're not happening. Maybe in our line of business, less so, because, I mean, it would be very obvious to spot a delusion. You're not really asking it to write like an essay for you or something of the sort. It's more like a proofreading.
And I think we'd love even more on when you're, and I'm just giving a very simple category of advert here, but when your teams are creating adverts, to what extent are they now using and working alongside AI? Just help us understand the state of the art on that, Fizo.
So it's just, like I said, it's just a tool that makes their work more accurate, more fast, and in the end, deliver impact at scale, which is something that we didn't used to be able to do before.
Okay, here's
optimization. I give you an example on this, right? So optimization for the audience to understand. Like Joulan knows this. So if you have like you have so many different platforms today, right? And you created a piece of artwork that will run as a campaign for one of your clients, but it's created in like a square format. And you want to do like multiple hundreds of optimizations that would make this particular piece work on all the different surfaces. That can be done today in a matter of minutes.
Okay, well, there's a whole other area that I want to dig into with you. But first, what Joulan has said, Shadi, has got me thinking about this idea of almost democratization of creativity. You know, it isn't, you know, forgive me, Fizo, confined to the Chief Creative Officer's office anymore. Just tell me how you see that through the lens of potentially some of the organizations you see, you work with.
Yeah, I hope Fizo doesn't hate me for this question. I say, look, you know, absolutely, exclamation, 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 bring it on. That democratization of these AI tools and, you know, making creativity accessible to the masses just enhances that landscape, in my opinion. You know, so when you have, let's say, you can imagine the AI as a magic paintbrush, right? And that magic paintbrush, anybody can utilize to take an idea or a concept, and someone that might not have had, you know, formal training or, you know, hands-on practical experience in this field, yet they want to express themselves creatively. Well, what's wrong with that? Isn't that what inclusivity is about? Isn't that how we diversify the industry? So for me, it's, you know, all in on AI and, you know, tools for everyone.
So here's to that. Say our guest here in Ithra. So I can see, and to an extent we are, and to a great extent we are all creators. We are all creative. So it helps more people to create. Okay, and you're talking clearly about democratization there. Fizo, I am interested to what extent, because you've talked about accuracy, you've talked about speeding things up. To what extent do you think AI can and does make us more creative?
To a great extent. I think this is a very good question, because when we think about AI, and generative AI and large language models in specific, we always think about this tool that helps us make things better, faster, stronger, like I said. But there has been new ways of storytelling that has been around now, and there's great case studies, award-winning case studies that can actually attest to that. One of them, if you don't mind, I can recite it really quickly. So Barrett, Germany, actually worked on a campaign called The Climate of Realism, right? And from the name, you know what it's about, probably. It's about climate change, but it's shedding light on this issue in a very new way. So AI pipelines have been trained on the styles of painters, landscape painters, that we all know and love, like Van Gogh and Gauguin and others, right? And after they've studied, the AI model studied those schools of art and knows how exactly to mimic the art style, real-time weather and climate data has been fed into that system.
Yes.
So that the system can generate an evolution of that painting that you know very well, of that very famous landscape, to show you what it will be in the future because of what we're doing to the planet. So it's kind of a new way of telling a story that usually we used to tell it in film or another form.
Hugely. So I guess the bottom line then is, how do what we might have traditionally thought of as creatives, how are they responding? And feel free to come in, all of you, on this, but Fizo, lead us off on it. How are they responding to this? How do colleagues feel? Are they excited? Are they threatened?
Well, some of them are excited. Some of them, just like the poll that we pulled in the beginning. Yeah. But you know, it's been circulating for a while, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen it before. The saying that is on LinkedIn and everywhere that says, AI is not going to take your job. A person who knows how to use AI will take your job, right? And I think it's technology is inevitable, and that progress is going to happen either way. So it's on us, and it's our responsibility as creatives to define the ways to use AI and collaborate with it again to benefit the creative process and to make it better.
So it wouldn't be the Sync Summit if we didn't start to gaze a little beyond today into what's going to be possible. So I wouldn't say predictions, but I want to see where you see this moving. Joulan, I'll get you to lead us.
I think maybe one very interesting area I think of development in the future is the marriage or the intersection between AI and augmented reality and virtual reality, right? So imagine a world where we're wearing, these smart glasses, whether they're, Ray-Ban smart glasses or any other smart glasses or a Quest device or any other device. The way we interact with each other, the way we speak with each other, the way we connect, the way we interact with objects, with our car, with our coffee. I think it's a whole new world and a whole new canvas basically for things to happen. And AI is actually augmenting this process. Why, for example? Like photorealistic avatars. So today, if we go on the metaverse or we go into a virtual world, all of the avatars look kind of cartoonish, right? But AI is being used today to create replicas of us in a virtual world so that the relationship and the connection can be very natural and very real. There are so many other also use cases of how AI is actually also augmenting these new technologies that I think are really interesting and promising.
So Joulan, presumably there is another theory, another school of thought, shall I say, which is that we are also now hyper alert to deepfake, that there is something comfortingly reassuring around a non-realistic cartoon version of us in the metaverse or somewhere else as we go into a huge election year for many countries around the world. There's something to how we will prefer things to be represented.
I think the most important thing is to build technology responsibly, right? And there are many processes in the engineering process to ensure that things like this don't happen, right? And even AI is being used for this, and also human people are being used to be able to check all of this stuff.
So I want to talk more about some of those sort of unintended consequences, perhaps. But one way to look at that, I think, Shadi, is sort of almost thinking about authorship and this whole idea of originality you've now all got me thinking about. So I guess, what does authenticity mean now when it comes to creative work? If we're working with all these amazing new tools, can that be considered authentic? Who is the author? I mean, just small questions for our first afternoon together, Shadi.
Yeah, sure. Look, I missed the lunch earlier, so I'm going to give a bit of food analogies. So maybe for that particular one, an analogy would benefit here. So if imagine that you're baking a cake with your friend and you bring along this secret homemade recipe, right? But your friend comes in and he's mixing away and he's frosting and he's putting the icing on the cake. And then you have this amazing cake and you present it at the party and it's a huge hit, okay? Who gets the credit? This is what we're going to start with, who owns this, so who gets the credit?
Well, they're different questions, aren't they?
Yeah. So you both would. But then can that be authentic? Can authenticity be utilized in that space because you are adding your own flavor or you are bringing your own recipe that you are using the capabilities of the AI as a tool to enhance what you already have? So you're the person, okay, and the AI is that helpful friend. And now that they've come along and they've helped you put together this great piece that you've created using the AI, doesn't that that authenticity then come and shine through because of the human involvement.
And that is very helpful conceptually. I'm wondering how my lawyer's going to feel about my cake explanation when I end up explaining that I think I own the music that your tools have helped me create. Forgive the ignorance on the question, do I own them?
So I'm not a part of the legal team. I'm not the best person to answer that question. But I believe if you're creating something in the open domain, then yes, you do own them. You do own them. The commercial rights, you look at the commercial rights of an open source contract, then you would own them, yeah.
I mean, Fizo, it's not an unserious question, is it? Just in terms of that sense.
You like to put me on the spot, that's right.
No, you'd be disappointed if I didn't. But the good news is, team, I've now finished with my easy questions. So, because actually, why don't we delve just a little bit more on who owns the work? Because that could turn out not just to change how we feel about it, but to turn out how a lot of these creative partnerships play out. Fizo, have you got a quick take on that?
Yeah. So there's a brilliant book by Austin Kleon called Steal Like an Artist, right? And it talks about this whole debate in the creative industry about like what exactly is like stealing or plagiarism versus inspiration. And he had this one quote in the book that I think sums this whole issue up, right? He says, steal from many, never from one. If you steal from many people, you're not really stealing, right? Because that's actually what we do in the creative process unintentionally. You get inspired by people in your life, you get inspired by the books you read, the exhibitions and the museums you visit, and then all of this kind of comes together in like a melting pot and forms your authentic opinions. Because nothing is original. Things are authentic, though. They can be authentic, right? So if the data sets that a certain model has been trained by are public, and they all come together in that same melting pot to produce a piece of work, that means that if I actually created that, I own that specific piece, but I don't own the parts that made it, right? And that's, I think, is the best way that I can put it as a creative person.
I'd like to build on what Fizo's saying. So let's say you had a super smart pet parrot, okay, and you taught the parrot a lot of new tricks, and this parrot becomes amazing. It goes out and it performs these tricks in public. Who owns the tricks? The parrot? Naturally you do. I mean, you're the trainer. You've trained this parrot, so you own those tricks. And I think that's the same thing applies here in the use of AI tools. You are the creator. You are the owner. You are utilizing this as a tool. So therefore, anything that you generate is that human touch which has given you the right over whatever you've created.
So what if someone, let's say we had this like massive heckle coming in here which says, okay, these are important, and they'd be heckling me here, but they're details. You know, we're talking about some legalities, we're talking about different ways of thinking about creativity. What's more important is how can we as a society, as a group of societies, harness AI creatively to solve big problems. So I guess that, you know, that's the big question, really, I think, that we ought to be stepping up to. So let's riff a little bit on that, because ultimately we've got researchers, academics, professors, entrepreneurs, innovators in the room. Joulan, help us think about the big question.
It's harnessing AI to solve big problems in the future that can transform the economy.
Whether to capture imagination, whether to draw attention, whether to communicate.
Okay, I believe, the way I would answer this is I would look at how technology pushed the envelope of creativity throughout history. So let's think about, for example, the printing press or the camera or the internet, right? Like it really pushed the frontier and enabled new business models to like scale. Things were able to be delivered at scale. So I think basically what's interesting about AI is that it is disrupting business models. It is enabling people to deliver things at scale, but it's also enabling people to deliver things in a very personalized way as well. So and I think I think companies and people that are able to capture that tension, scale and personalization are going to be the big winners.
And you must think about that, Fizo, a lot, because you know, in a previous era, we would have all have watched, for example, forgive me going back to advertising, the same version of an ad. Okay? Picking up off this great point about personalization, how does that play out if we're all seeing different things?
The biggest thing about personalization at scale, or the biggest challenge, is usually the messaging, the matrix of those all different messages that serve different audiences. Because people buy the same product for different reasons, right? And usually this was always doable, by the way, ever since we started with press and print. But it was just such a daunting experience to go through all the different messages and the images or the moving images that work with them and all of these things. But because of that scale that I'm talking about, and because of that, and actually Meta is working on technologies that help smaller businesses now to kind of build their own ads with that same thinking in mind. So building your business model, what your business stands for, what is the main message that you want to drive, and then with the help of AI, you can create all those different multiple messages that might resonate with different audiences on the same product.
Yeah, I'd just love to know, because you're very sort of client-facing on that, Shadi, how that's playing out in the conversations you're having.
Yeah, look, it's playing out in terms of efficiencies. Yeah. So, I mean, building off what the team was saying here, that there is scale and you can do things really, really fast. And I guess for us, in terms of client-facing, that means we can drive a lot of efficiencies in the day-to-day work that we can do. AI can definitely give you personalized insights, but it's also great at predictive analytics. So a lot of the things that we've been doing in the advertising industry for many, many years that would take us time, we can now minimize the time it took us to come up with our plans, our content calendars, and our media buying format with the efficiencies that we can utilize through the AI, obviously maintaining the human check that we mentioned at the start of this.
So what do you then say? Because we've got very different generations here across Sync, tuning in and live here at ITHRA. By way of advice, if you're speaking to people moving through often the creative industries and they're saying, look, of course I want to harness AI. Of course I want to become more creative. What's your practical advice, Joulan, and then others?
If you want to harness AI and you want to impact others, I mean, I think the most important thing is these days, knowing how to code and knowing how to develop is a very useful skill, basically, because you're able to really build with these things and think. So basically, be in a startup, dream, think big, because really these technologies are solutions to problems. They're not, they're not an end goal in and of themselves. So I think big, because you have a big arsenal of tools that you can use in this day and age to do really interesting things.
Okay, and then of course I'd be not doing my job if I didn't say, well, hang on, won't AI be able to do the coding for us? Why do I need to learn?
That's true. That's true. That's a very good point as well. But a lot of so there are a lot of low-code and no-code platforms out there that you can also use to build even large language models or any of these.
Because I think what you're also saying is just experiencing those very different environments, very different types of organization, getting close to those problems. Fizo, you must get asked all the time for mentoring tips. What do you say?
But if I'm advising young creatives in specific, I would tell them the first thing: don't listen to me. I mean, we're here from an older generation struggling with the reality that they were born into. So they're a lot more comfortable around technology and they know what's going on a lot more than us, right? Yeah. But if I absolutely have to give an advice, I think the advice would be like embrace change, right? So I remember stories about my father and my grandfather. This generation lived their whole life doing the same thing, right? For me, it was a little bit more challenging because I had to do a career shift every now and then. Just a career shift. For the young creatives, the challenge is much bigger. They're probably going to have to reinvent themselves every few years or so.
And what about within that, some of the most prized and incredibly valuable occupations? Let's say we're only amongst friends here. A graphic designer comes to you and says, I've just seen a piece of technology which has blown my mind, creating the most incredible painting within milliseconds. Fizo, do I have a future doing what I love in graphic design?
Absolutely. Absolutely. For two reasons. The first one, technology without humanity is an engine without a pilot. You can be the pilot. You don't have to do the act of crafting the design. You can think the design, you can dream the design, and AI can do it for you. That's on one end.
Well,
on another end...
All right. Carry on.
On another end, I mean, I still shoot film. I'm not kidding. I shoot 35mm film
on the
with my
physical
camera.
film, right, okay.
On physical film. Even though film has been like, I don't know, you don't have
Why?
to. Huh?
Why?
Because I like that kind of, we've talked about this a little bit, that human touch. I mean, I don't think that because humanity invented technologies that can solve a lot of problems and can progress certain processes a lot faster than before, that means that you're not going to enjoy doing what you enjoy best, and that will still be regarded as a piece of art, but in its own value, in its own way.
All right, but the graphic designer knows that the Future Aviation Forum is happening right now in Riyadh. And they say, I put it to you, Fizo, that engines without pilots are drones, and drones are pretty big.
Yeah, but then what makes this drone fly to begin with? Like, why is it there? What's
Who
the
programs
why?
the drone?
Come in.
There is a controller. I mean, at some point, there is a controller. I would definitely say to the next generation or the younger generations and across all industries, definitely dabble in it. Get your hands dirty. Work out how it works, but just tread with a little bit of caution, because a lot of these models rely on something which is predictability, right? And predictability doesn't necessarily mean certainty. So always be cautious, tread on the cautious side, get your hands dirty. You will be the pilot, you will navigate, you will bring the authenticity into whatever is being created. And even if that means it's the final touch, but right now you're probably doing A to Z, across a piece of artwork, whereas maybe in 10 years' time, you'll be doing final touches on 100 pieces of artwork.
Yeah.
And
but
it becomes more about the
involved.
why rather than the how. And I think that's beautiful. It's really beautiful that young creatives need to think about the intention of why they're doing what they're doing instead of how they're doing it. That's my take.
And is there, Joulan, on that, you talk about there's almost a call there for experimentation, a whole range of potential users, if you like. Is there a type of user, a type of stakeholder, perhaps, that you would like to see embracing some of these particularly emerging technologies? This could be a call to action, really.
Everyone. I think these technologies really have the opportunity to disrupt and to add value to sectors across the board. Personally, I'm very passionate about education. The education field. I'm very passionate about, development, like economic development field. But they're really being adopted across the board. If there was a call to action, you want me to give a call to action, I would say education and economic development. Like, how can we reach businesses, small and medium businesses? How can we empower people to, to create their own businesses, to move up, the ladder? This is something that I'm passionate about.
Say a bit more about that, because that's right. Because you could feel a little confused by the pace of change. You really need to see, yes, I get the joy of experimentation, but we have a bottom line to think about. Just help us join those dots between that experimenting, particularly creatively, and that commercial development.
Always, when you're building a product, when you have an idea, you need to think about solving a problem that can be monetizable, or a problem that can be, you can build a commercial model behind it. So it doesn't work to say, okay, I want to save the world, or I want to do something great, without having some sort of sustainability model behind it. So unfortunately, this is the way the world works. So they need to go hand in hand, or else your good intentions won't take you very far.
So how are we going to see that uplift in education, given the amount of state-funded education globally?
How would we see education? There are a lot of problems that can be solved in education. For example, there is a startup in South Africa, I forgot its name, but it's using Meta's large language model, Llama, to basically educate people on WhatsApp. It's a chatbot, basically. So school students that need help with their math problems or need a tutor, basically they just subscribe to this service, they go on WhatsApp, and they talk to this chatbot that has been trained on their lessons and basically on their modules and on the national curriculum. So this solves a problem.
Super personal.
Exactly, and it's also very monetizable. So.
Yeah, so I'd love to see more on that. So I guess, Fizo, I'm going to come back to you just our final few minutes together, because in that poll question, about a third of our audience said that it was somewhere between, somewhere in between, whether AI helps or hinders creativity, right?
Yeah.
And the other split, obviously, was it helps, and the other third said it hinders, right? But all of that sort of assumes that creativity is in the human camp, and AI will either help or hinder.
Yeah.
So what do you make of the bigger idea that AI can and indeed is creative?
Well, are you referring to the fact that now AI can compose symphonies, for example? It is true, but I have, and that's my opinion, right? I have a take on that. And I, again, going back to this example of technology without humanity. And for me, and I know it sounds a little bit cheesy, but for me, I mean, there are some people who came together and decided to compose this music, or this symphony or this masterpiece, but in codes instead of notes. in a way or another, right? So again, the machine doesn't have a why. The machine does what it's told. So that person that felt, I want to see if AI can actually create a symphony, is in some way the creator of that masterpiece and owns that piece of work to a certain extent.
Yeah, now I wish we had another hour on greater creators, but yes, of course, you know.
Can I come in on that? So no, it's a very interesting question. I think it's important to keep in mind that a lot of the AI models we use today are very specific purpose AI models. So they're not able to do things across different domains, right? And we're still very far from actually arriving at that. So when you describe creativity, I mean, what is creativity, right? The ability to put things together in a certain way and, you know, present them and maybe add some value. So a lot of the AIs we're still talking about today are still very, I mean, still in the beginning of the process. Yes. So I don't think it's fair to even compare between, you know, your creativity or the esteemed gentleman's creativity here and some of these AIs.
No, it's a fair comment. So,
it's AI capabilities, right? So it's a human creativity and AI capability. And together, this is where we create that partnership. And this is, you know, that intersection of what I said at the start is the next frontier. So when these things come together, I think we have an excellent recipe for where we are going next in the future. But I have to agree with Fizo and Joulan that the creativity is definitely the human aspect. Capability is still just coming from the AI and using it as a tool and how we use it.
And how do you three even keep up with what's possible? Because, you know, you're very fluent in what is possible, but
meditation.
At the same
yoga. It helps a lot, honestly.
Is that true?
Zen.
So how does that help?
No, I mean, so what's the question is, how do we keep up with all these changes?
With the developments, with the advancements, in a way that you can still take them to use, to experiment, to put to use. Because frankly, we're reaching the point where through overwhelm, through the sheer volume of what's available, can put some of us into shutdown mode.
Yeah. I think being able to see meaning in chaos, being able, you know, with all this data that we're being fed, being able to recognize and realize what's important, whether you're the founder of a company or an executive in a creative industry, that's a very useful skill in the world we live in today.
And sort of seeing.
So how you do it, I don't know. You can meditate, you can do sports, you can just be naturally good at it, but it is a very useful skill.
Okay, we will keep talking about that and thinking about that. Fizo, you must be under pressure for this. You have to know the latest thing in all of these.
I depend on my 17-year-old son all the time. He has his hand on the pulse. He knows what's going on. But I also, because of my job, I actually need to kind of keep up to date with everything.
So what's your advice to us? Because we want our finger on the pulse.
Yeah, of course. You need to. I mean, disconnect to connect, obviously, is a very important concept that you need to. Don't let yourself get overwhelmed with all of this technology and everything that's happening around you, but you must also embrace change and be able to learn a little bit about everything that's going in the world today. Otherwise, you won't be able to reinvent yourself in the future.
Right. Disconnect to connect. Also, the idea of a reverse mentor, a younger mentor, absolutely priceless. Shadi, how do you keep across it? Because your clients around the world say to you, come on, Shadi, what's the latest thing?
Yeah, I'm lucky and I'm blessed with a huge team. And so I'm in the business side of things. So my role is to encourage and empower the creatives in these teams to break things, to get their hands dirty, to go in there and try things out. So based on the feedback that I get from my team and what is not working for them, gives me the insights that I need to know that will drive efficiencies and enhance business. So for me, it's the feedback that's coming back from the team more than doing it myself. So